I'm a 27-year-old guy, and my relationship with my mom has always been a roller coaster of guilt trips, arguments, and her trying to control every part of my life. She's the kind of person who will call you 10 times in a row if you don't answer the first, then claim you don't care about her well-being. For years, I thought that was just normal family dynamics. But recently, something snapped and I realized I couldn't keep living like this. The tipping point came during what was supposed to be a simple family dinner. I'd stopped by my parents' house after work, already drained from a long day. As usual, my mom started in on me about not visiting enough. Then it escalated to her listing all the ways she had sacrificed for me, which included things like letting me live rent-free when I was 17. Keep in mind, I've been financially independent since I graduated college. I pay my bills, rent, and even cover my younger brother's share when he's struggling. But none of that matters because, according to her, I owe her everything. By the time dessert rolled around, the argument hit its peak. My mom accused me of being ungrateful and selfish. The phrase, "after all I've done for you," was tossed around like a weapon. What set me off wasn't just the words, it was the look in her eyes, as if she enjoyed watching me squirm under the weight of her guilt. When I didn't react the way she wanted, she went straight for the jugular, bringing up something deeply personal from my past that she knew I was sensitive about. It was calculated and cruel, and in that moment I knew I couldn't keep letting her have that kind of power over me. I left that dinner furious but also strangely calm. On the drive home, I kept replaying her words, the way she twisted my life into some kind of morality play where she was the selfless hero and I was the villain. That night I barely slept. Instead, I drafted a message that took me hours to perfect. It was clear, firm, and respectful. I told her I needed space. I didn't call her names or lay out a laundry list of grievances. I just said I couldn't keep engaging in the same toxic patterns and needed to focus on my mental health. When I finally hit send, I thought I'd feel relief. Instead, the backlash started almost immediately. Within an hour, she called me 6 times, leaving voicemails that ranged from sobbing to rage-filled rants about how I was tearing the family apart. I didn't answer any of them, but it was hard to sit there and listen to her spiral. The next morning, my brother called me. He's younger and has always managed to stay somewhat on the sidelines when it comes to my mom's drama. He told me she had already called him, trying to recruit him to talk sense into me. To his credit, he didn't take her side, but he also warned me that this wasn't going to blow over anytime soon. "You know how she gets," he said. "She's not going to let this go quietly." He was right. My mom took her campaign to Facebook, posting one of those vague statuses that was clearly about me. It's heartbreaking when the people you've sacrificed everything for turn their backs on you. Some kids forget the meaning of family. Within hours, the comments were flooded with sympathy from aunts, cousins, and family friends, all chiming in about how hard it must be for her and how she's the strongest woman they know. Then the texts started. First, it was my aunt, telling me I should apologize before it's too late because you only get one mom. Then a cousin messaged me, saying they didn't want to take sides but thought I should consider her feelings. Everyone seemed to have an opinion, and none of them cared about mine. I've been in therapy for years, mainly because of how growing up in that household affected me. My therapist had been urging me to set boundaries for a long time, but I always hesitated. I didn't want to be the bad guy. This time, though, I knew I couldn't back down. When I told my therapist about the text I sent, she said it was a huge step toward breaking the cycle. Still, she warned me that the pushback would be intense, and she wasn't wrong. I showed the text to one of my closest friends, who's been my rock through a lot of this. They were supportive and said I did the right thing, but they also admitted they were worried about the fallout. "Your mom doesn't seem like the type to just let things go," they said. That's putting it lightly. The final straw came when my mom sent me a box of old family photos. At first, I thought it was a peace offering, but then I found the note inside. It read, "I'll always love you, no matter how much you hurt me." It was the most manipulative thing I'd ever seen. She didn't want to apologize or address the issues I'd raised. She wanted to guilt me into folding. I decided to post on Reddit for advice, hoping to find someone who'd been through something similar. I didn't know it then, but that post would be the start of a journey I wasn't expecting, a journey to reclaiming my life. Update 1. When I posted my initial story on Reddit, I didn't expect the fallout to get worse, or for it to escalate as quickly as it did. Within hours of sending my mom that text, my phone turned into a battlefield. It started with a call from one of my aunts, who launched into a tirade about how I was breaking mom's heart. She didn't even ask for my side of the story. Instead, she went on about how family unity was more important than airing grievances. Then the messages started pouring in from cousins, all guilt-laden appeals to just fix things or let it go. My uncle, who I hadn't spoken to in years, even texted to remind me that blood is thicker than water. Apparently, everyone had been recruited to drag me back into line. Meanwhile, my mom's social media campaign ramped up. Her posts went from vague to outright accusing me of abandoning her after all she'd done for me. One of her updates was a long, dramatic post about how she raised her kids alone while sacrificing everything, and how it was heartbreaking to see them turn their backs on her. She didn't mention my name, but everyone knew who she was talking about. I even saw comments from distant relatives chiming in with condolences for what she was going through. Just when I thought it couldn't get more intense, my brother called. He told me mom had been calling him nonstop, leaving voicemail after voicemail about how she was under so much stress that it was making her sick. She'd even mentioned a mysterious health crisis that she blamed on the pain I was causing her. My brother wasn't buying it, but he also warned me to prepare for her to double down. The next day, I got an email from her. It was long and emotionally charged, listing every supposed sacrifice she'd made for me since I was born. She included everything from taking me to sports practice as a kid to helping me pay for books one semester in college. It was written like a ledger, tallying up everything I owed her. Of course, it ended with her painting herself as the victim and a thinly veiled accusation that I was a terrible son for treating her this way. At work, the stress started affecting me. I couldn't focus because I was constantly checking my phone, dreading the next wave of messages. I even caught myself zoning out during a meeting, something that's completely unlike me. For the first time, I began wondering if maybe I was overreacting. That doubt crept in, but I kept reminding myself why I'd drawn the boundary in the first place. In the middle of all this chaos, I got a message from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in a while. They told me they'd seen the family chat blowing up and wanted me to know they supported me. Apparently, they'd had their own issues with my mom's behavior in the past, but had never confronted her. Their message felt like a lifeline, a reminder that I wasn't imagining things. That night, I had a flashback to a moment from my childhood. I was maybe 9 or 10, and I'd come home from school with a bad grade on a math test. Instead of helping me, or even just scolding me, my mom had turned it into a dramatic performance. She cried loudly, saying I'd ruin her life if I didn't succeed in school. That memory stuck with me, a vivid reminder of how her emotional outbursts always overshadowed everything else. The next day, another package arrived. It was a small box filled with old photos of me as a kid. There was a note inside, written in her usual dramatic style, "I'll always love you, no matter how much you hurt me." It was classic emotional manipulation, and while part of me wanted to ignore it, I couldn't help but feel the weight of it. That evening, my friends stepped up in a big way. They organized a game night at my apartment, insisting that I needed a distraction from all the drama. For a few hours, we laughed and joked like nothing was wrong. It was the first time in days that I felt like I could breathe. After they left, I started looking into my options. If my mom escalated further, I wanted to be prepared. I researched legal protections, like restraining orders, and even thought about talking to a lawyer. My therapist had mentioned setting firm boundaries, and I figured knowing my rights was part of that process. In my next therapy session, I laid it all out: the calls, the texts, the social media posts, and even the package. My therapist helped me reframe the situation, pointing out how the guilt and manipulation were just tactics my mom used to maintain control. That conversation gave me the clarity I needed to stay firm. Finally, I updated my Reddit post, sharing everything that had happened since I first wrote about my situation. The responses flooded in with advice, support, and stories from people who had been through similar experiences. One comment in particular stood out to me: "You're not breaking the family apart. You're just refusing to let someone else's toxicity control your life anymore." It hit me like a wake-up call. This is far from over, but for the first time, I feel like I'm not fighting this battle alone. Update 2. The next chapter of this chaos kicked off when the family announced plans for a holiday gathering. My phone buzzed with a group text inviting everyone to a Thanksgiving dinner at my aunt's house. Almost immediately, people started messaging me privately, urging me to attend. The general tone was that it was time to put all this behind us for the sake of the holiday. My brother, however, wasn't having it. He replied to the group chat, saying he wouldn't be going unless everyone agreed to respect the boundaries I had set. This caused a massive blow-up. My aunt accused him of picking sides, and other family members started chiming in, saying things like how family gatherings shouldn't be about holding grudges. The group chat quickly devolved into a back-and-forth debate, with me awkwardly watching from the sidelines. Just as I thought things couldn't get messier, a handwritten letter from my mom arrived in the mail. It was a rambling mix of apologies, accusations, and guilt. She started by saying she was sorry if I felt hurt, but quickly pivoted to how I was tearing apart the family and how everyone was walking on eggshells because of me. At the end of the letter, she mentioned that she'd been considering selling the family heirloom, a watch that belonged to my late grandfather, because my actions proved I didn't deserve it. My therapist was clear it was time for a no-contact period. She explained that the constant influx of guilt and manipulation was preventing me from processing anything. I agreed and decided to block my mom on all platforms for at least a month. Meanwhile, my brother started to crack under the pressure. My mom had been calling him non-stop, crying about how I'd forced her hand with the heirloom decision. He told me he didn't want to take sides, but it was clear he was feeling the strain. I didn't blame him. She was relentless. At work, I confided in a coworker I trust. She surprised me with how insightful her advice was. She suggested documenting everything: texts, voicemails, social media posts, just in case things escalated. People like that don't usually stop, she warned, and it's better to be prepared than caught off guard. I started keeping a folder with screenshots and recordings. Then came the unannounced visit. One evening, I was home watching TV when I heard a knock at the door. I checked the peephole, and there she was, my mom, standing on my doorstep with tears in her eyes. I froze. Part of me wanted to ignore her, but the knocking grew louder. She started calling my name, her voice shaking. I opened the door just enough to step outside and close it behind me. The last thing I wanted was for her to get inside. She started talking immediately, switching between crying and accusing me of being cruel. She claimed she just wanted to fix things, but it was clear she was there to force some kind of reconciliation on her terms. When I didn't budge, she threatened to call the police and tell them I was refusing to let her retrieve her belongings from my place. I told her she had nothing of hers here and calmly suggested she leave. At one point, I considered calling the police myself. She wasn't leaving, and the situation was escalating. Eventually, a neighbor came out and asked if everything was okay. That seemed to snap her out of it, and she left, but not before shouting that she was going to tell the family I had threatened her. I immediately called one of my closest friends, who came over to help me calm down. They stayed with me for the rest of the evening, making sure I wasn't alone. The next day, I made an appointment with my doctor to address the stress-induced headaches and sleepless nights I'd been having. The doctor recommended some stress management techniques and assured me it wasn't uncommon to have physical symptoms in situations like this. My mom's social media antics hit a new level after the visit. She started tagging me in posts, accusing me of being heartless and selfish. She even claimed that I had physically threatened her during the confrontation. Some family members reached out, asking what had happened, while others took her side without question. I updated Reddit that evening, detailing the visit and everything that had happened since my last post. The response was overwhelming. People shared similar stories, offered advice, and gave me strategies for dealing with the continued manipulation. One comment stuck with me: "You can't reason with someone who only wants control. Focus on protecting your peace." That advice helped me reframe the situation. I added a lock to my door and doubled down on my decision to stay no contact. While I knew this wasn't the end, it felt like I was finally taking steps to regain control of my life. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was on the right path. Update 3. After the surprise visit from my mom, my therapist suggested a new strategy: draft a formal letter outlining my boundaries. She explained that putting everything in writing would make my stance clear and leave no room for misinterpretation. It wasn't about creating a confrontation, it was about protecting my mental health. I spent hours working on that letter, carefully balancing firmness and respect, and made sure every word reflected what I was willing to tolerate moving forward. Before I could send it, though, my mom hit me with an ultimatum: reconcile with her, or she would cut me out of her life. The message came through one of my cousins, who said my mom was heartbroken and didn't know how to move forward unless I made amends. She had even told the family she was preparing to rewrite her will, removing me entirely. I wasn't sure if she was bluffing, but the theatrics were enough to kick my stress up a notch. Then came the next blow. I heard from another cousin that my mom had decided to give the family heirloom, the watch that belonged to my grandfather, to a distant cousin as punishment for my betrayal. It felt like every few days she was escalating the situation, trying to push me into reacting. What I didn't expect was my brother stepping up. He confronted my mom, telling her point blank that she was being manipulative and unfair. This didn't go over well. She accused him of being ungrateful too, claiming she'd sacrificed just as much for him. Their argument caused a noticeable rift, and while my brother assured me he was on my side, I could tell the pressure was starting to wear him down. As the guilt weighed on me, I got a message from an estranged uncle. We hadn't talked much over the years, but he shared his own experiences with my mom. He described how she had manipulated and alienated him from the family, using similar tactics to what I was going through. His message was validating and gave me a clearer picture of the pattern my mom had been following for years. In the middle of all this, something unexpected happened. I got a promotion at work. It was a huge confidence boost and a reminder that I was capable of handling my life, even when the personal drama felt overwhelming. But my relief was short-lived because my mom had a new tactic up her sleeve. This time, she started involving family friends. People I hadn't spoken to in years began reaching out, saying things like, "You only get one mom," and urging me to apologize. It was relentless. I ignored most of the messages, but one voicemail in particular hit hard. It was from an old family friend who essentially accused me of abandoning my mom in her time of need. Hearing that left me emotionally drained, and for the first time, I called in sick to work just to regroup. The tide turned slightly when an unexpected ally emerged. One of those same family friends spoke up in a group chat, calling out my mom's behavior. They pointed out how her constant posting on Facebook seemed more like a cry for attention than a genuine attempt to resolve anything. That moment shifted the dynamic. A few other people started questioning her narrative, and her posts began to backfire. By then, I'd finished drafting the boundary letter. I emailed it to my mom and sent a copy via certified mail, ensuring she couldn't claim she didn't receive it. In the letter, I laid out exactly what I needed: no more unannounced visits, no guilt trips, and no dragging other people into our issues. I also made it clear that while I wasn't closing the door entirely, I needed space to heal before we could have any kind of relationship. Her response came quickly. She sent another message to the family, claiming I had disowned her and that she would be cutting me out of her life entirely. It didn't stop there. She accused me of trying to ruin her reputation and said I was no longer welcome at any family events. It was exhausting to see how far she was willing to go to twist the story. My brother's patience finally snapped. He told her he was cutting contact as well, at least for the foreseeable future. He admitted it wasn't an easy decision but felt it was the only way to stop enabling her behavior. Having his support meant more to me than I could put into words. I updated Reddit again, sharing the details of the boundary letter and my mom's extreme reaction. The support I received was overwhelming. People offered practical advice, shared similar stories, and validated my decision to prioritize my well-being. One comment in particular stuck with me: "You can't make someone change, but you can change how much access they have to your life." While the situation is far from over, I'm starting to see small cracks in her control over the narrative. For the first time, I feel like I'm gaining ground in this battle for my peace. Update 4. After I sent the boundary letter to my mom, the silence was deafening. For 2 weeks, there were no calls, no texts, no unannounced visits. It was eerie. Part of me wondered if she was finally respecting my boundaries, but my gut told me this was the calm before the storm. My brother kept me updated. Apparently, the family group chats were still active, and my mom hadn't stopped vilifying me. She doubled down on her claims of being abandoned, and was now implying that I was unstable. My brother said she brought up old childhood incidents, twisting them into stories that painted me as ungrateful or unkind. Around this time, one of my aunts reached out. She framed her message as an olive branch, saying she wanted to help mediate between me and my mom. She thought if we could just talk things out, we could repair the relationship. I declined. I wasn't interested in mediation when my mom refused to acknowledge her behavior or take accountability. I used that quiet period to reflect on everything. I started journaling, writing down memories from my childhood and how they had shaped my self-worth. Growing up, my mom's approval felt like the only thing that mattered, but it always came with strings attached. Even when I achieved something, she would find a way to make it about her or tear me down subtly. Writing it out helped me see how deeply those patterns had affected me. The peace didn't last. My brother called to let me know my mom had started spreading new rumors, this time claiming I was mentally unstable. She told family members that my behavior was erratic and implied I needed help. A few relatives reached out, parroting her narrative and asking if I was okay. It was frustrating, but I kept my cool and didn't engage. Around this time, I met up with an old friend who's known me for years. They noticed I seemed calmer and happier and pointed it out. Hearing someone who knows me so well say that was eye-opening. They reminded me that setting boundaries wasn't just for me, it was for everyone in my life. The healthier I was, the better my relationships with the people who truly cared about me would be. Physically, I started feeling better too. My headaches were less frequent, and I wasn't waking up in the middle of the night anymore. My doctor had told me stress could take a huge toll on the body, and now that I was removing some of that stress, I could feel the difference. Then something unexpected happened. A few extended family members began questioning my mom's narrative. My brother said some cousins had started privately discussing how often my mom exaggerated or manipulated situations. One of them reached out to me directly, saying they supported me but didn't want to get involved publicly. It wasn't much, but it felt like progress. Right when I thought things were shifting in my favor, a letter from my mom arrived. At first glance, it looked like an apology. She started by saying she was sorry for anything she might have done to hurt me, but as I read further, it became clear it wasn't a real apology. She slipped in phrases like, "I don't understand why you're doing this to me, and I just want my son back." The entire letter felt like a veiled attempt to guilt me into reconciling. I brought the letter to my next therapy session. My therapist helped me break it down, pointing out the manipulative language and lack of accountability. It was a classic move from someone who didn't want to change but wanted to regain control. With her help, I decided not to respond to the letter. Engaging wouldn't help. Meanwhile, my brother shared some surprising news. He'd started therapy too. He said watching me set boundaries and prioritize my mental health inspired him to do the same. It felt like a milestone, knowing that our shared experiences growing up in the same household had led us to a place of healing, even if the journey looked different for each of us. I also started focusing more on self-care. I picked up yoga, tried mindfulness exercises, and made it a point to spend time outside whenever I could. It didn't fix everything, but it gave me tools to cope with the ongoing drama. To prepare for any potential escalation, I consulted a lawyer. I wanted to know my options in case my mom's behavior crossed into harassment. They gave me solid advice on how to document everything and what steps to take if things got worse. It was empowering to know I had a plan. As usual, I updated Reddit. One comment stood out: sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you need. Build your chosen family with people who lift you up. It hit me hard. I realized I'd spent so much time trying to fix my relationship with my mom that I hadn't fully appreciated the amazing support system I already had in my friends and brother. The drama isn't over, but for the first time in years, I feel like I'm finally in control. My mom can choose to change or not, but I won't let her choices dictate my life anymore. Update 5. Things took an unexpected turn when my mom reached out with what she called a grand gesture. She wanted to meet in person to rebuild our relationship. After months of drama, manipulation, and constant escalation, this request felt like another tactic, but I wasn't entirely sure what to expect. My brother warned me that it could easily be another ploy to guilt me, and my therapist agreed that I should go in with firm boundaries and low expectations. The day of the meeting, I arrived early at the cafe we'd agreed on, choosing a table near the window where I could see her approach. When she arrived, I noticed right away how carefully she'd orchestrated her appearance. She looked vulnerable, almost frail, as though trying to visually reinforce the image she'd been portraying to the family, that of a mother abandoned by her ungrateful son. She wasted no time blending tears with accusations. Her words alternated between emotional pleas for us to move forward and pointed remarks about how I'd hurt her. At one point, she leaned into the guilt, talking about how she couldn't sleep at night, wondering what she'd done to deserve my treatment. For the first time, I didn't let her control the narrative. Calmly but firmly, I addressed her manipulation head-on. I pointed out the way she weaponized guilt, how she used other family members as pawns, and how her actions over the years had eroded trust. I reminded her that setting boundaries wasn't about punishment, it was about protecting my mental health and creating a healthier dynamic, something she seemed unwilling to acknowledge. Her reaction was swift and dramatic. She accused me of being heartless and claimed I was being influenced by outside forces, a thinly veiled jab at my therapist. When it became clear that her usual tactics weren't working, she stood up abruptly, muttered something about how she couldn't take any more of my cruelty, and left the cafe in a huff. Oddly, I didn't feel upset or shaken by her exit. If anything, I felt relief. For the first time, I walked away from one of our encounters without carrying the weight of her emotions. I finally understood that her feelings weren't my responsibility. The fallout was less dramatic than I expected. My brother told me that she tried venting to the family group chat, but the usual chorus of supporters was quieter this time. Some family members had started seeing through her tactics after months of watching the drama unfold. A couple of cousins even reached out to apologize for not believing me earlier. It wasn't a mass reckoning, but it felt like a small shift in my favor. My bond with my brother grew stronger during this time. We started having deeper conversations about our shared experiences growing up with our mom. He told me how he'd always felt like he was walking on eggshells, and for the first time, we talked openly about things we'd never acknowledged before. Therapy had been helping him, and seeing his progress was encouraging for both of us. My friends, who had been my support system through all of this, decided to throw a little celebration to mark what they called my Freedom Day. It was lighthearted and fun, but it also felt meaningful. We toasted to growth, peace, and moving forward. In my next therapy session, my therapist pointed out how much progress I'd made. She said I'd gone from feeling trapped and reactive to being proactive and in control of my boundaries. It felt good to hear, but I also knew the work wasn't over. Boundaries would always need reinforcement, and there would always be moments of doubt. But I felt equipped to handle whatever came next. Even my mom's social media posts began to lose steam. The vague statuses and passive-aggressive remarks became less frequent, and her audience seemed to be shrinking. A few family members who had initially been vocal supporters stopped engaging entirely. It was like people were slowly realizing that her narrative didn't add up. At work, I started noticing changes too. Without the constant stress hanging over me, I was more focused and productive. My promotion felt well-deserved, and I found myself genuinely enjoying my job again. My confidence was growing in ways I hadn't expected. The biggest change came when I decided to start creating new traditions with the people who mattered most to me. For the first time, I didn't feel obligated to attend a family holiday gathering. Instead, I hosted a Friendsgiving at my apartment, inviting my brother and a few close friends. We cooked, laughed, and made plans to do it again next year. It was the first time I truly felt free to define what family meant to me. I shared one final update on Reddit, thanking everyone who had followed my story and offered advice along the way. The support from strangers had been a lifeline during the toughest moments, and I wanted people to know how much it had helped. As I look back, I realized this journey wasn't just about setting boundaries with my mom, it was about reclaiming my life. I don't know what the future holds for our relationship, but I'm finally at peace knowing that I've done everything I can. For now, I'm focusing on the people who lift me up and the life I'm building for myself.